Tycoon invites Mistress for the weekend. His ex-wife and triplets welcome her. It was a quiet Friday morning in Seoul, and the city pulsed with its usual rhythm of ambition and indifference. In the heart of Gangnam, behind the glass towers that pierced the sky, Daniel Han stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse suite. He wore a tailored suit, crisp and untouched by imperfection, but his eyes, cold and calculating, reflected something far more turbulent than his polished exterior would ever admit. Daniel was a self-made tycoon, CEO of Han Global, feared in boardrooms, envied in society pages. He had everything: a fleet of luxury cars, international properties, loyal assistants who whispered when they spoke to him, and a mistress who worshipped him, or so he thought. On the leather couch behind him, Selena stretched like a cat. She was stunning, long legs, sleek black hair, an effortless confidence in her smile. She had grown used to his silences and his schedule, but that morning he was unusually quiet. "Appa," she said sweetly, watching him. "You haven't said a word since breakfast. Something bothering you?" Daniel didn't turn around. His fingers drummed lightly against the glass. "There's a place I haven't been to in years," he murmured. "I want to go." Selena sat up, wrapping the satin robe tighter around her. "A vacation? You? That's new." He finally turned, eyes meeting hers with that same unreadable intensity. "It's not a vacation. It's just something I want to revisit. A chalet, up in the mountains. My old place." Selena tilted her head, intrigued. "Old place? You mean the one you said you gave away after the divorce?" "I never sold it," he said quietly. "Legally, I transferred it, but it doesn't matter. I doubt anyone's there. It's been years." The words hung heavy between them. Selena had never asked too much about his ex-wife. She was a shadow in his past, one he had erased with money and silence. Unji, that was her name. Daniel hadn't spoken it out loud in years. But that morning, something pulled at him. Something deeper than guilt. Maybe it was the silence of his own penthouse, the way no sound could soften the echo of a man who had everything, except peace. "I want you to come with me," he said, grabbing his car keys from the marble counter. "Just a weekend. Something different." Selena smiled, rising to her feet. "Of course, Appa. I'll pack something cute." He didn't smile back. The drive out of the city was long. As the skyscrapers gave way to endless fields and pine-covered hills, Daniel remained mostly silent. Selena tried to lighten the mood. Music, jokes, her hand on his thigh, but he remained distant. Her curiosity eventually gave in. "You used to live there with her, didn't you?" Daniel's jaw tightened. His hands gripped the steering wheel just a little harder. "Yeah," he said after a pause. "Back when I was still someone else." Selena didn't push further. She knew that when Daniel went quiet, it was like ice settling in the air. But even she could feel it, that he wasn't driving toward pleasure. He was driving toward a ghost. When they finally turned off the main road and climbed into the hills, fog hung low over the road like a memory. The trees were tall, thick, their branches stretching like arms across the sky. And then, through the mist, the chalet appeared. It was a beautiful wooden structure with wide glass windows and a stone chimney, surrounded by wildflowers and silence. Not abandoned, not empty. Smoke rose from the chimney. There was life inside. Daniel pulled the car to a stop. He stared. Selena blinked. "Wait! Someone's here?" Before he could speak, the front door opened. Out stepped a woman. She wore a soft, beige sweater and jeans with worn patches at the knees. Her long dark hair was tied back in a braid, and there was a calm, unshakable grace in the way she held herself, as if the world could fall apart and she would not shatter. Daniel's breath caught. Unji. Behind her, 3 children peeked through the doorway, triplets. One boy clung to her side, another held a drawing in his hand, and a little girl stood slightly in front of them, bold and curious. Selena stepped out of the car, confused but smiling. "Annyeonghaseyo," she greeted politely. "We didn't expect anyone here. We thought this place was empty." Unji looked at her, then at Daniel. Her eyes were steady. And then, softly, she said, "Welcome." Daniel's heart thundered in his chest. He hadn't seen her in 7 years. Not since the day he walked out of their tiny apartment with a signed divorce paper and a cold goodbye. Not since he turned his back on the woman who once gave up everything to love him. And now here she was, standing in the threshold of a home he thought he'd forgotten, surrounded by children who bore his eyes. His voice, always so composed, faltered. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his tone harsher than he intended. Unji didn't flinch. "I live here. You..." He took a step forward. "This place was... You gave it up. Legally and completely," she said. "Your lawyer sent the papers. I never expected to see you again." Selena looked between them, the truth slowly settling into her skin like a cold wind. "You're... his ex-wife?" Unji nodded, her eyes never leaving Daniel's. "And these children..." Selena looked at them. "They're yours." Unji's hand gently stroked the hair of the little girl beside her. "Ours," she corrected quietly. "They are our children." Daniel's world stopped spinning. He couldn't speak, couldn't think. June, the eldest boy, stepped forward. "Are you my Appa?" Daniel didn't know how to respond. The boy continued, voice soft and hopeful. "Amma always said you were working far away. That one day you'd come back." Something inside Daniel shattered. He looked at Unji, her face calm, but her eyes swimming with years of silence, of sacrifice, of holding everything together alone. She didn't look at him with hatred. She looked at him with something worse, pity. And in that moment, Daniel Han, the Tycoon, the untouchable man who built an empire, realized just how small he had become in front of the life he abandoned. The weekend had just begun, but already nothing would ever be the same. Você diz. Certo, agora tu como narrador e storyteller desenvolva a historia sem marcacos com o nome de cada tópico que for desenvolve. Me conte sobre o tópico tu com dialogo como su faço espectador. Sempre lembrando de desenvolver com muita emoco. Com muitos sentimentos de forma que a estrutura de narrativa utiliza uma linha temporal linear de modo o espectador sentir o que o personagem está sentindo amigos. Com 6.000 characters o chat GPT diz. The wind gently rustled through, the flower petals as morning sunlight spilled over the valley, brushing the mountainside with soft gold. A small greenhouse stood behind the chalet, built from aged glass and warm cedar. Inside, rows of hydrangeas and wild lilies swayed in harmony, tended with love by the same hands that once held a man's heart. Unji moved between the rows, tying back vines and misting the leaves. She didn't need to check the time. Her body moved with rhythm and instinct, a dance born from years of silent routine. Her hands were rougher now, her eyes a little older, but her soul had grown deeper than any wound Daniel had left behind. Just beyond the greenhouse, laughter erupted. The children were awake. The triplets, June, Min, and Era, ran barefoot in the soft grass, chasing a blue kite that fluttered high above the trees. Their joy was pure, boundless, like sunlight through glass. "Be careful near the edge," Unji called out, stepping out into the warmth. She wiped her hands on her apron and smiled. "Min, hold your brother's hand. Era, come get your shoes." Era groaned dramatically. "But I like the grass." "You'll like it less if a bee finds your toe," Unji teased. The little girl pouted, but obeyed, racing up the hill with her siblings. This was her life now, quiet, predictable, beautiful in its own way. It hadn't always been. There were nights years ago when she clutched all 3 babies to her chest on the cold wooden floor of a studio apartment, wondering how she'd survive the next week. Nights when she didn't eat so they could have milk. Nights when June's asthma kept her up, and she'd pray, eyes swollen, voice hoarse, not for Daniel to return, but simply for strength. She had buried her love for Daniel Han. She'd folded it gently like an old letter and tucked it deep into the soil beneath her hydrangeas. But she could never bury the pain. Inside the chalet, breakfast was nearly ready. Unji set the table quietly, placing 4 plates instead of 3. She didn't know why. Maybe because something inside her, something she hated, still believed he'd show up one day and ask to sit at the table again. "Amma," Era asked suddenly, hopping into the kitchen. "Can I draw Appa today?" Unji stiffened. She turned slowly, wiping her hands on a towel. "Why? I just want to imagine him. Teacher said it's okay to draw our family." Min joined her, eyes wide with curiosity. "Do we really look like him?" June stood silently in the corner, holding an old photograph, creased and faded, from a drawer he wasn't supposed to open. It was the only picture they had of Daniel. Unji looked at the photo and felt her heart flinch. Daniel was smiling in it, one arm around her shoulders, the other cradling her swollen belly. He looked young, softer, before the coldness, before ambition devoured everything tender in him. "You have his eyes," she said softly. "All of you." June spoke, voice serious. "Will we ever meet him?" She hesitated. The lie tasted heavy on her tongue. Then, kneeling in front of them, she placed her hands on their tiny backs and whispered, "Maybe one day, when he's ready to remember who he used to be." The kids nodded, used to her vague answers, and scampered off with the innocence only children are allowed to carry. But as Unji rose to wash the dishes, she let herself remember, just for a moment. Their wedding had been small, barely more than a courthouse signature and a rooftop dinner. Daniel didn't have a suit. She wore a white summer dress. They shared tteokbokki under the stars and talked about building a life together. Simple, modest, honest. But then his father died, and the company passed to Daniel. He tried at first, he really did. He held the babies in one arm while emailing investors with the other. But the stress mounted. The weight of legacy crushed his ideals. The rich whispered that his wife was low-class, unfit to stand beside a Han. His mother sneered behind closed doors, mocking Unji's calloused fingers and hand-me-down clothes. Slowly, Daniel changed. He came home less, laughed less, touched her less, until one day he stopped coming home at all. "I'm not the man you married anymore," he had said, placing the divorce papers on the table without meeting her eyes. "And you deserve better than this life." But she didn't want better. She wanted the man who used to warm her frozen hands in winter with his breath. The man who cried when he heard the heartbeat of their first child. That man disappeared behind a tailored suit and a fortress of ambition. And so, she stayed silent, signed the papers, took the house he gave up without care, and raised her children far from the noise of his new world. Outside, the wind picked up again, and with it came a sound, gravel crunching beneath tires. Her heart paused. She stepped outside, wiping her hands on her apron. The car pulled into view, sleek and black like a shadow from the past. And when she saw him, Daniel Han stepping out beside a woman too beautiful to be a stranger, her world tilted. The children ran toward the noise. "Amma, who is that?" June asked, tugging on her sleeve. Unji stared at the man who once promised to protect her forever. Her heart beat louder than the wind. "That," she whispered, steadying her voice, "is your father." But in her chest, something fragile cracked, because part of her had believed he would never come back. She was real, still here, Unji. And those children, his children, he hadn't asked. He hadn't wanted to know. Somewhere deep down he'd assumed, maybe even hoped they didn't exist, that his absence had left only silence behind. But the silence was now broken by laughter. Tiny feet ran across the path, stopping a few steps from him. The girl was the first to speak. "You're tall," Era said with wide eyes. "Like really tall. Taller than in the photo." Daniel looked down, blinking, his throat clenched. He couldn't speak. "Are you really Appa?" Min asked, stepping forward. His hands were small and stained with marker ink. "You don't look like a dad." June, the eldest by only a few minutes, stood slightly apart from his siblings. His eyes weren't filled with innocence. No, they held something older, sharper. A quiet question, the kind no child should ever have to ask with their eyes. Daniel glanced up. Unji was still on the porch, motionless. Her arms were folded across her chest, her face unreadable. She had always been so hard to read when she was holding back tears. Selena's voice finally broke through the thick, strange air. I think we should come back another time," she said softly, uncertainly. "This wasn't what we—" "Daniel, maybe this is a mistake." He didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on June. The boy walked up to him. Not afraid, not excited, just still. "Why did you leave?" he asked. Daniel swallowed, and finally, his voice returned, hoarse and low. "I didn't know about you, about them." "That's not what Amma said," June replied. Daniel looked up again, heart pounding. What did she tell you?" "That you were working far away," the boy said after a pause. "That you were too busy to come back. But one day you would." Selena's face shifted. She took a step back, as if sensing she no longer belonged in that scene. "Daniel," she murmured. "I'll wait in the car." He barely heard her. His eyes were on Unji now. She stepped off the porch. Her movements were calm, graceful, but there was steel behind them. Her presence had changed. She was no longer the girl who had clung to his hands in crowded subway cars. She was a woman now, a mother, entirely self-made. When she stopped in front of him, she didn't flinch. "You're surprised," she said simply. He nodded once. "I didn't know you were here. I didn't know about them." "You didn't want to," she corrected. Daniel's mouth opened, but the defense didn't come, because it was true. "I tried to disappear," she continued. "You gave me the house and told your lawyer never to contact you again. So I didn't. I just lived." He took in the lines near her eyes, the weariness behind her strength. "You should have told me, Unji." She almost laughed, but it came out bitter and quiet. "Told you? After you walked out like we were a meeting that ran too long? After you said I was holding you back? Daniel, you didn't even ask if I had enough money for the babies. You gave me keys and papers and silence. I was angry. You were afraid," she cut in, "of being small, of being seen with someone who didn't fit your new world." He couldn't deny it, because she was right. Everything had changed after his father died. The pressure, the expectations, the inheritance, and the shame. "You don't get to feel sorry now," she said. "It's been 7 years, 7 birthdays, 7 winters without your voice in this house." A gust of wind passed between them, and with it, the faint sound of the children giggling behind them. "I want to talk," he said quietly. "Just us." Unji hesitated. Her eyes flicked toward the car where Selena sat, watching through the window with uncertainty in her gaze. "She doesn't belong here," Unji said. "Not now." "She didn't know," Daniel said. "She didn't need to." They stood in silence. Then, slowly, she turned and walked back toward the house. "Come in," she said over her shoulder. "But only for a moment. Then you leave." Inside, the air was warm with the scent of cinnamon and old wood. The walls were still the same soft beige he remembered painting with her one weekend. Their clothes splattered, her laughter echoing as they fought over the color of the trim. He had forgotten that sound. Until now. He sat down awkwardly at the table while she poured tea. No ceremony, no warmth, only the clink of porcelain and the tension of 1,000 unsaid things. "I thought you hated tea," she said flatly. "I grew into it," he replied. She sat across from him, eyes never wavering. "I can't fix what I did," he said at last. "I don't even know where to start." "Then don't pretend you can," she said. "Don't show up and think a weekend will undo 7 years." "I didn't plan this," he said quickly. "I didn't even know you were still here." "But you came back," she whispered. "Why, Daniel?" He paused. The truth felt dangerous in his mouth. "But she deserved it. Because I've built everything, and I'm still empty. I thought I needed power, respect, but it all feels hollow. I remembered this place. I remembered you." Her breath caught, just for a second, but she hid it well. "I've watched our children learn to live without you," she said. "I've seen June get quiet whenever other dads pick up their kids from school. I've heard Min ask why you never send postcards. I've seen Era draw you from imagination, over and over, hoping you'll look like someone kind. Daniel dropped his eyes. I'm sorry. I don't want your apology, she said. I want consistency. I want safety for them. I want them to never have to wonder if you'll walk out again. I won't, he whispered. You did once, she reminded him. So don't make promises. Just prove something. They both sat in silence. For the first time, Daniel wasn't in control. There were no contracts to sign, no boardrooms to command. Only the quiet war between a man's regret and a woman's resolve. In the other room, the children laughed again. Unji stood. You can sleep in the old guest room tonight. It's late. After that, we'll see. He nodded, eyes burning. As she walked away, her back straight and unshaken, Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in years. Daniel sat on the edge of the bed in the guest room, his shoulders hunched, hands clasped tightly together. The room hadn't changed much. The same wooden wardrobe stood against the far wall. The same quilt, hand-stitched by Unji's aunt, still covered the bed. Everything carried the scent of time, of a life he had not lived, of years that had marched on without him. He ran a hand through his hair, exhausted but too alert to sleep. The children's laughter from earlier echoed faintly in his ears. Their faces haunted him, especially June's. That boy's gaze had held too much silence, too much knowing. A knock came, soft, hesitant. He turned quickly. The door creaked open just enough for 3 heads to peek through. June, Min, and Era. They didn't say anything at first. Then Era stepped inside, barefoot, holding a book against her chest like a shield. Amma said we could say goodnight. Daniel's breath caught. You should be asleep. We can't sleep, Min said, entering behind her. It's too weird. June said nothing, but he entered last, closing the door behind them. He moved with quiet authority, even at 7. Era climbed onto the bed beside Daniel without asking. Amma says you used to sleep in this room when you had nightmares. Daniel blinked. She told you that? She nodded. And that you always left the light on. Min stood at the foot of the bed, bouncing slightly on his heels. Amma tells us stories about you. Not every day, but sometimes. What kind of stories? Daniel asked, afraid to hear the answer. Like how you once made her a birthday cake, but it collapsed in the middle, Era giggled. She said it looked like a crater. Daniel chuckled, surprised by the sound coming from his own throat. It did. And you made it worse by trying to fix it with ice cream, Min added. That part made us laugh so much. Daniel smiled softly. I just wanted to surprise her. June sat on the chair across the room. He didn't smile. His voice was quiet when he finally spoke. Why didn't you come back? The question dropped like a stone in the room. The other 2 turned toward their brother, the air between them tensing. Daniel met June's eyes. I don't know how to answer that, he admitted. Not in a way that will make it better. Just tell the truth, June said. So he did. I was scared, Daniel whispered. I thought the life I was building didn't have space for all of you. I thought I had to choose between being strong and being present. So I chose wrong. Era reached out and held his hand. Her fingers were tiny, warm, steady. I thought you were in a castle, she said quietly. Like a king. Min nodded. And that one day you'd come get us in a shiny car. Daniel bit the inside of his cheek. I had the car, he said, voice cracking. But I forgot what I was supposed to bring home in it. There was a long pause. Then June asked, Are you going to leave again? Daniel looked at him, really looked. June's eyes were mirrors. They reflected not just himself, but all the pieces he'd abandoned. All the birthdays he'd missed. All the scraped knees he hadn't bandaged. All the nights someone else had calmed their cries. I don't want to leave, Daniel said. Not again. Not ever. June stared at him, unblinking. Then he nodded once, not in forgiveness, but in acknowledgement. We'll see, the boy said. Daniel felt his chest tighten. That's fair. Amma says trust isn't something you ask for, Min said suddenly. It's something you grow. Like tomatoes. Era nodded. Ours never grow right. We forget to water them. Daniel smiled. Then maybe I can help. They stayed like that for a moment, quiet and strange, but not uncomfortable. June stood first. We should go before Amma gets worried. Do you think she's mad I came? Daniel asked, unsure why he even said it out loud. Min shrugged. Amma's like soup. She doesn't get mad fast. She just simmers. Era giggled. Unless you break her vase. Then she's fire. June turned at the door, one hand on the frame. She's not mad, he said quietly. She's tired. Then they were gone. Daniel sat in the silence they left behind. Felt warmer. Later that night, Unji stood outside their room, listening to the faint sound of her children settling back into bed. She didn't move. She didn't cry. But when she walked down the hallway and saw the faint glow beneath the guest room door, she paused. Inside, Daniel lay awake, one hand resting over his eyes, the other clutching a tiny, crayon-drawn picture that Era had slipped into his lap. A family of 5, drawn in wild colors, with Appa written above a tall figure with an awkward smile. Daniel held it like it was the first thing he had ever earned in his life. And outside the door, Unji finally exhaled. Not in relief, not in anger, but in fear, because the children had opened their hearts too fast. Daniel awoke before the rest of the house stirred. The crayon drawing still lay beside him on the nightstand. He picked it up again, his thumb brushing over the uneven letters, over the crooked smile Era had drawn for him. It wasn't just paper, it was a lifeline, and it terrified him more than any boardroom ever had. He rose slowly, washed his face in cold water, and walked toward the kitchen. The smell of brewing barley tea already drifted through the hall. Unji was there. She always was before anyone else, moving like a current of calm necessity. She didn't look up when he entered. She stood by the stove, her back to him, stirring a pot of juk, rice porridge with chopped vegetables and sesame oil, the kind you made when you didn't know what else to offer. Daniel cleared his throat. She didn't speak. I woke up early, he said, unsure of himself, unsure of what she even wanted from him, if anything at all. I noticed, she replied simply. He stood behind her for a moment, watching the steam rise. He noticed how she wore the same gray sweater from the night before, how the sleeves were rolled up to her elbows, exposing pale arms with tiny scars. A burn, maybe, from years of rushing to make ends meet. I want to help, he said finally. With breakfast. Or whatever. She turned slightly, not facing him fully, but enough for her expression to flicker in his direction. Her eyes were unreadable again, but her voice was neutral. There's nothing to help with. It's already done. I could set the table, he offered. She nodded, then pointed with her chin toward the cabinets. Cups are in the left, spoons in the second drawer. He moved quickly, grateful for something to do. The silence between them was not yet comfortable, but it was no longer violent. It hovered like breath in winter, visible, delicate, in danger of breaking with a single wrong word. I didn't sleep much, he said after a moment, arranging bowls and napkins. I wouldn't expect you to, she murmured, tasting the porridge, adjusting the salt. Unji, he began, but her name in his mouth felt too intimate, too sacred. He stopped himself. She finally turned to face him, ladle in hand. You didn't come here to fix the past, did you? No, he said quietly. I don't think I can. Then what? She asked, voice calm, but edged with something sharp. What do you want? I want to be part of their lives. And mine. He looked at her, stunned by the weight of the question. She didn't mean it romantically, he could tell. It wasn't about rekindling what they once had. It was about presence, consistency, truth. He swallowed hard. I don't know, he admitted. I don't know if I deserve to be. She studied him for a long moment. You don't, she said. Not yet. Then she turned away and called out softly toward the hallway. Kids, come eat. The sound of feet running down the hall disrupted the tension like wind through tall grass. The triplets rushed into the room, their faces still warm with sleep, hair tangled, eyes bright. Era grabbed Daniel's hand without hesitation. "Can I sit next to Appa today?" she asked. Unji blinked at the word, almost imperceptibly. Daniel froze. She didn't correct her daughter. She didn't flinch. She simply nodded once, her face unreadable again. "Yes, you can." And so they sat, together, for bowls, for spoons. The fifth bowl, Unji's, was the last to be placed, and she sat down more slowly, like she wasn't sure how to be part of this new shape. Daniel watched the children eat, listened to their chatter about a school project, about a bird they'd seen the day before, about the way Era accidentally dyed her tongue blue with candy. And he watched Unji too, quietly, the way she refilled their cups without being asked, the way her hand brushed Min's hair as he told his story, the way her eyes softened when June pushed his vegetables aside and she gently placed them back in his bowl without scolding him. She had carried everything, all of it, and he had vanished. "I forgot what this felt like," Daniel said, voice barely audible. She looked at him. "What? This? A table? Warm food? Small voices?" June glanced at him. "We do this every morning." "I know," Daniel said, swallowing hard. "I just mean, I haven't." Unji didn't speak. She just watched him for a second longer, then turned her attention back to Min, who had started talking about a kite-building contest at school. "I want you to come," Era said suddenly, looking at Daniel. "To the school thing, the kite flying." "Me?" he asked, stunned. "You're tall. You could help it go higher." Daniel smiled, but before he could answer, Unji interjected softly. "We'll talk about it later, Era. Let's not rush." Era pouted but nodded. Daniel understood the message. Nothing would be given easily. After breakfast, the children went outside to play in the garden. The door closed behind them with a soft click, and the house fell quiet again. Daniel turned to Unji, who was washing dishes with practiced, tired motions. "I don't want to push," he said, "but I meant what I said. I want to stay." She dried her hands slowly, turned to face him. "There's a lot you didn't see," she said. "Not just the birthdays, the illnesses, the nights I thought I wouldn't make it through. You weren't here when June stopped speaking for 2 weeks after seeing another kid with a father. You weren't here when Min started waking up with nightmares. You weren't here when Era asked me, through tears, if she had done something wrong to make you go." Daniel closed his eyes. The pain of those words sliced through him. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Don't be sorry," she said. "Be better." He looked at her, this woman who had loved him once and had built something beautiful from the ruins he left behind. "I'll try," he promised. He didn't know what else to say. He had already said too much, or maybe not enough. Then came the low hum of tires on gravel. Both their heads turned toward the window at the same time. The car. Selena. Daniel's stomach tightened. He had left her outside too long. He hadn't even noticed the time pass. Unji's eyes didn't waver. "You should go. She's waiting." Daniel hesitated. "I will. I just..." But he didn't finish. Unji didn't need him to. She turned back to the couch, picking up a sweater Min had left behind. Her voice was flat. "She doesn't know them. She shouldn't meet them." "I didn't plan any of this," he said. "I know," she replied, folding the sweater with sharp, precise movements. "That's the problem. You never planned anything with us in mind. Not then. Not now." Daniel flinched. Outside, he could see Selena through the window, her expression uneasy as she sat in the passenger seat. She had probably expected brunch, wine, and mountain views. Not a lost family, not a house full of echoes. "I should talk to her," he said. "You should have done that before you brought her here." Unji's words weren't bitter. They were honest. That hurt more. He nodded once and stepped outside. The air was cooler now, as if the warmth had retreated in anticipation of what was to come. The wind tugged at his sleeves as he walked toward the car. Selena rolled the window down before he even reached it. Her sunglasses were off, folded in her lap. She looked up at him, and the first thing she said was, "They're beautiful." Daniel blinked. "The kids," she said. "I saw them through the window. The girl with the pigtails. The boy drawing with sidewalk chalk. They look like you." He took a breath. "Selena, you didn't tell me," she said quietly. "Not just about them. About her. About any of it. I didn't know how." Selena shook her head slowly. "That's not true. You didn't want to. That's different." He ran a hand down his face, exhausted. "I didn't expect this. I didn't even think they'd be here." "Do you love her?" she asked, eyes sharp now. Daniel hesitated. "I don't know," he said. Selena let out a breath that was almost a laugh. But there was no humor in it. Just pain. "Well, that's an answer." She looked away, her gaze stretching toward the trees. "I thought I understood you," she said. "I thought I knew the man I was with. Ambitious, yes. Cold, maybe. But controlled. Rational." Daniel didn't interrupt. He owed her the space to speak. "But now I see there's this whole part of you, this broken part, that you buried under money and appointments. You left a family. You left children. You walked away and didn't look back." Her voice trembled. "How could I trust that you wouldn't do the same to me?" Daniel opened his mouth to speak, but she held up a hand. "I'm not asking for a promise," she said. "I'm not asking for anything." Then her voice softened, barely above a whisper. "I just don't think I want to be here for this." He stepped back from the car. Selena started the engine. The sound was too loud, too sudden, like the final word in an argument no one wanted to finish. Before shifting into drive, she looked at him one last time. "She loves you," she said, "even if she won't admit it. That kind of love doesn't die, but it does change." And then she drove away. The sound of tires on gravel faded into the mountains, leaving Daniel alone in the quiet again. He turned back to the house. Unji was still by the window watching him. She hadn't moved. Their eyes met. He gave her a single nod. Not of triumph, not of shame, of understanding. Unji hadn't moved from the window. Her hands rested lightly on the edge of the sill, her gaze still lingering on the spot where Selena's car had disappeared down the winding path. "She's gone," Daniel said quietly. Unji nodded. "I know. She didn't deserve this," he added. "None of this was her fault. She didn't ask to walk into a home you abandoned," she said calmly. "But neither did I." Daniel leaned against the wall, guilt sinking deeper into his bones. "I thought I was doing the right thing," he said after a long pause. "Back then, I thought, if I left, you'd be free. You'd be better off without me." She turned then, slowly, deliberately. "Do I look like someone who was better off without help?" His throat tightened. "No, I carried all of it," she said, stepping away from the window now, her voice steady, but her eyes gleaming. "I carried 3 babies alone. I carried rent, food, medicine, fear. I smiled for them when all I wanted was to collapse. I held their hands and wiped their tears and taught them to believe in someone who wasn't there." Daniel didn't speak. He couldn't. "I was angry for a long time," she continued, her voice lower. "But not because you left. That part, I accepted. What broke me was that you never even looked back. Not once. You cut us off like we were a wrong investment." He looked at her then, truly looked, at the curve of her shoulders, the tremble in her hands, the hurt that had sunk deep into her skin like a scar that refused to fade. "I hated you," she whispered, "but not enough to stop telling them you were good, that you were busy, that you were building something important, because I refused to let them hate their father." Daniel stepped forward only once. "What do you want from me?" he asked softly. "Now." She looked at him, as if the question wounded her. "I don't want anything," she said. "That's the difference. I stopped wanting a long time ago. All I care about now is them, their safety, their peace." "I want that too," he said. "I want to protect them." "Then protect them from you," she snapped. "From the version of you that walks away when things get too complicated. from the version that disappears behind money and excuses. Daniel flinched. "I'm not that man anymore," he said quietly. "Prove it," she challenged. "Don't say it. Show it. Because every word from your mouth feels like a ghost knocking on a door I already locked." Silence settled between them like fog. She turned back toward the window, her voice softening. "Just barely. They like you. That terrifies me." Daniel's heart clenched. "I won't hurt them," he said. "They're already hurt," she replied. "You just didn't see it happen." For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then the door opened suddenly. Min poked his head inside, cheeks flushed from running. "Amma, we're hungry again," he shouted, grinning. "June says we should have noodles." Unji blinked away the wetness in her eyes, quickly masking her pain with a practiced smile. "I'll be right there," she called. Min disappeared as quickly as he'd arrived. She exhaled, then looked at Daniel once more. "They forgive faster than I do," she said. "Don't mistake that for permission." "I won't," he promised. But deep down, he wasn't sure how to move in a world where forgiveness came from tiny hands and judgment from the one woman who once trusted him with everything. She had, and now, gave him nothing but a chance. Inside the house, Unji stirred a pot of broth on the stove while the children peeled carrots and green onions at the table. Their sleeves were rolled up, their hands clumsy but eager. Min hummed to himself. Era dropped half a carrot on the floor, and June sat quietly, methodically slicing as though each movement meant something more than just food. Daniel watched from the doorway. He didn't speak. He didn't dare interrupt. He just observed. There was something sacred in the way this household moved. Not efficient, not perfect, but real, rooted. He had never understood what it meant to build something like that. Not until now. Not until he stood outside it, aching to be let in. Then, without warning, Era looked up and saw him. "Appa!" she called with excitement, waving the carrot in her hand like a flag. "Come help." Daniel hesitated. Unji paused her stirring. June looked over at his mother before turning his gaze to Daniel. Not with suspicion this time, with a flicker of expectation. Daniel stepped into the room slowly, almost like a trespasser in his own memory. "You sure?" he asked softly, crouching beside Era. She giggled. "You can peel these, but don't eat them." Last time, Min stole half the cucumbers. Min grinned with his mouth full. "No proof." June handed Daniel a small peeler without a word. Their fingers touched for a second. And for that second, Daniel forgot everything else. Unji went back to the stove, silent. As the soup simmered and laughter filled the corners of the room, a sudden knock at the front door cut through the air like a blade. Everyone froze. Unji wiped her hands on her apron. Daniel stood up, unsure. The knock came again, firmer this time. She reached the door first and opened it. An old man stood on the threshold, wearing a navy coat, a silk scarf tucked into his collar, and polished shoes that didn't belong in the countryside. Daniel's breath caught. "Chairman Han?" Unji asked in disbelief. Daniel stepped forward. "Father?" The old man's expression remained stone cold. He looked at his son, then at Unji, and finally at the children peeking around the corner with wide, confused eyes. "I need to speak with you," the chairman said, his voice low and commanding. "Privately." Daniel swallowed hard. "Here?" "No," the chairman replied, eyes scanning the humble interior of the home. "Outside." Unji stepped protectively in front of the children. "Stay here," she said firmly. Daniel followed his father out to the small garden, his chest burning with questions he hadn't prepared to ask, and answers he might not want to hear. The wind was colder now, the sky darker. "What are you doing here?" Daniel asked once they were alone. His father's eyes narrowed. "I should be asking you the same." "I came to see them," Daniel said. "To be with my children. You never told me they existed." His father's jaw clenched. "You made your decision, Daniel. Years ago, I warned you what would happen if you stayed with her. She was not a match for our family. She's the mother of my children, Daniel said, voice rising. You walked away, the chairman barked. You made a clean break. Do you know what it cost me to protect your reputation? To erase the whispers. Daniel stepped back, stunned. You erased them. His father didn't flinch. I did what was necessary. You had a future, a company to run. You weren't built for village dinners and crying babies. You don't get to say that, Daniel whispered, his voice shaking. You don't get to define what I'm built for. His father looked at him with a coldness only decades of power could shape. You still have responsibilities. This mess you've stepped back into, it threatens everything. They're not a mess, Daniel said. They're my children. And you think they'll be welcomed in our world? You think the board will respect a man who hides bastards in the countryside? Daniel's hands balled into fists. Don't you dare call them that. The chairman stepped closer, lowering his voice. Listen to me. Walk away again. This time for good. I'll ensure they're cared for. Quietly, discreetly. Money, housing, whatever she needs. But you do not belong here. And neither do they. Daniel stared at him, then said, You have no idea what I gave up. You gave up nothing, the old man hissed. You gained the world. Daniel's eyes burned. No, he said. I lost it, and I'm not making that mistake again. The door behind them opened. Unji stepped onto the porch. Her eyes were tired, but sharp as glass. You need to leave, she said to the chairman. The old man turned to her, expression unreadable. You've always had fire, he said, but fire doesn't make you a Han. No, she replied calmly, but it made me a mother. He scoffed. And what has that earned you? She looked at Daniel, then back at his father. Everything, she said. With that, she walked past them, down the steps, and gently took Daniel's arm. You said you want to protect them, she whispered. I do. Then start now. Daniel turned to his father. Go home, he said. The chairman stared at his son, as if seeing him for the first time. Then, without another word, he turned and walked down the path, disappearing into the trees as the wind began to howl louder. Daniel stood there for a long moment, shaken, but steady. The house had quieted again, but something inside it had shifted, something subtle but undeniable. Unji stood at the sink, rinsing the last of the dishes. She moved with her back to him, her hair pulled back, sleeves rolled high. Daniel was behind her, at the table, fiddling with the same crayon drawing Era had given him days before. He traced the letters over and over with his finger like they could rewrite something in him. He hadn't spoken much since his father left, but the weight of that visit still clung to his shoulders. Unji broke the silence first, her voice calm but direct. You didn't tell her. Daniel looked up, startled. What? The woman you brought here. She didn't know you had children. He swallowed. No, she didn't. Unji turned around slowly, wiping her hands with a towel. Why? He hesitated. Because I hadn't let myself believe it yet, that they existed, that I had missed all this. She crossed her arms. So you were pretending we never happened? He stood, walking toward her, but not too close. I wasn't pretending. I was hiding from everything. Do you think that makes it better? She asked, voice trembling. To bring someone new into this house without warning her or us? I didn't know you were here, he said. And if you had? She countered. Would you have come? He didn't answer. The silence, again, was louder than his voice could ever be. She stepped closer this time, not with anger, but with something heavier. Weariness, fragile strength. Her eyes were clear, but tired. You disappeared, she said, and I tried to convince myself it was for the best. That maybe it was better for the kids not to grow up with a man who was never really there. But now you're here, and you're standing in the kitchen like this is your life again. And I don't know if I'm supposed to believe you or protect them from you. Daniel's voice dropped. I'm trying to do the right thing. Are you? She whispered. Or are you just trying to make peace with your guilt? He flinched. I've asked myself that too, he admitted. And maybe at first, yes, maybe I came here because I couldn't live with the silence anymore. But now, I'm staying because of them." She looked at him, her eyes softening just slightly. "They already love you. I know. That scares me. I know," he said again quietly. Then she said something he didn't expect. "They think you're a hero." Daniel looked away, ashamed. "I'm not." "You're not," she agreed. "But they don't need you to be one. They just need you to stay." He nodded. His voice broke as he asked, "And what about you?" She held his gaze steady. "I stopped needing anything from you a long time ago," she said. "But that doesn't mean I stopped feeling." His heart twisted. She took a step back, pressing the towel to her chest like it was holding her together. "Do you love her?" she asked suddenly. Daniel blinked. "Selena?" Unji nodded. "I don't know," he answered truthfully. "She came into my life when I was already half asleep. She filled the silence. She never asked about my past. She just existed beside me. But you never let her in." "No," he said, "because the door I shut was still locked from you." The room went still. "I never stopped thinking about you," he said. "That's not the same as loving someone," she whispered. "I know, but I never stopped missing this." He looked around. "Even when I buried it under success and meetings and planes I never wanted to catch." She exhaled, slowly. "And now I just want to earn back a seat at this table." Her eyes brimmed, but she didn't let the tears fall. Instead, she turned and walked toward the hallway. She paused at the entrance and looked back at him. "I'm not asking you to prove anything to me," she said. "I'm asking you to be here, day after day, even when it's hard, even when the children cry, even when I can't look at you." Daniel lay awake in the guest room. His eyes were open, staring at the ceiling, yet seeing nothing. The weight in his chest wouldn't let him sleep. It wasn't regret anymore. It was the ache of realization, the ache of everything he had missed, and everything he might never fully have again. A faint knock at the door startled him. He sat up quickly. There was a pause. Then, a voice, soft, almost unsure. "Appa?" It was June. Daniel opened the door gently, and the boy stood there, his expression unusually serious for someone so small. "Can I come in?" Daniel stepped aside without speaking, heart already tightening. June entered the room and sat down on the edge of the bed, legs dangling. He didn't look at Daniel, just stared at the floor, swinging his feet slowly. Daniel knelt in front of him. "What's wrong?" June hesitated. "I had a dream." Daniel's voice dropped. "A bad one?" June nodded. "Do you want to talk about it?" The boy was quiet for a long time. Then he finally spoke. "You left again." Daniel's throat tightened. "In the dream?" he asked. June nodded. "I woke up and the house was empty. Min and Era were crying. Amma was trying to find you. But you were gone." Daniel reached out, his hand resting lightly on the boy's knee. "I'm not going anywhere." "But you did before," June said. "I know," Daniel whispered. "I did, and I can never change that. But I promise you, no matter how long it takes, I'll show you that I'm staying. Not just for a day, or a weekend. I'm here, for good." June finally looked at him then, and his eyes, they weren't angry, they were scared. And Daniel understood that fear because he had planted it there. "Can I ask something?" June said. "Anything. Why did you leave Amma? Was it because she didn't wear nice clothes? Or because she didn't know business stuff like you?" Daniel's chest twisted. He had no words, only guilt, deep and sharp. "She was never the reason I left," he said. "I left because I was weak, because I thought I had to become someone else to survive. And in doing that, I let go of the people who loved me the most." June studied him, quietly absorbing every word. "Amma cried a lot when you left," he said, "but she never said bad things about you." Daniel felt tears sting his eyes. "She protected your image," the boy continued. "She said one day you'd remember who you were." Daniel's voice cracked. "She gave me more grace than I ever deserved." There was a long pause. Then June whispered, "Can I stay here? Just tonight?" Daniel nodded immediately. "Of course." June climbed onto the bed and curled into a ball, his back to the wall. Daniel lay beside him, careful not to disturb the boy's fragile comfort. The room dimmed further, shadows stretching across the floor. For a moment, Daniel just listened to June's breathing, waiting for it to slow. But then, just when he thought the boy had fallen asleep, June spoke again. "Do you love her?" Daniel turned his head. "Your mom?" "Yeah." Daniel stared at the ceiling. "I don't know what the right word is for what I feel," he said honestly. "But she's the only person who ever looked at me and saw who I really was. And even after everything I did, she still lets me be near you. That has to mean something." June was silent again. Then, a small whisper. "She misses you, even if she says she doesn't." Daniel closed his eyes. That night, he didn't sleep. He just lay there, beside his son, and listened to the fragile sound of forgiveness beginning to take root. But peace was fragile here, like mist on glass. He rose slowly, careful not to wake June, and walked into the hallway. The scent of boiling water and roasted barley met him. The kitchen light was on. Unji stood in the corner, already dressed, her hair tied loosely, her hands steady as she prepared breakfast. She didn't look up when he entered. "I thought you'd left again," she said softly, without turning around. He blinked. "I'm still here." "I know." Her voice didn't carry accusation, but it carried weight. Daniel stepped forward slowly. "June came to me last night. He had a nightmare." "I know," she said again. "He always does when something's about to change." Daniel pulled out a chair, sat at the table. He hesitated before speaking. "There's something I never told you." She turned the stove off but didn't move. She stood there, facing the window, her back straight, her shoulders still. Daniel continued, "After the divorce, I didn't just vanish. I wanted to, but there was more to it." She turned slowly, her expression unreadable. "My father didn't just pressure me to leave," he said. "He gave me a choice. Either walk away from you or lose the company. Lose everything." She blinked. "And you chose the company." He nodded, ashamed. "I was afraid of failing, of being powerless. I thought maybe I could come back later once things were settled, once I was stronger. But you never came back." "No," he said, "because by the time I looked back, I didn't recognize myself anymore." She stepped closer now, resting her hands on the table across from him. Her voice was low but sharp. "Do you know what it felt like?" she asked. "To hold 3 babies in my arms and hear nothing from you? No calls, no letters, nothing, just silence." "I hated myself," Daniel whispered, "but I didn't know how to come back. So you stayed away." "I stayed away because I thought I'd already lost you." Unji's voice cracked then, despite her efforts to hold it together. "You had." Silence swallowed them for a moment. But it wasn't empty. It was full of all the years between them. "I'm not saying this to excuse what I did," Daniel said. "I'm saying it because if I don't start being honest now, I'll never deserve to be part of their lives." She looked at him, and for the first time, he saw the depth of her pain. Not as coldness, but as survival. The way she had carried it all every day while pretending she was fine. "You're right," she said. "You don't deserve them yet." He nodded. "I know, but they deserve a father," she continued. "Not just a visitor. Not just a man who shows up with guilt and good intentions." "I want to be more than that," he said. "I want to build something here, if you let me." Her eyes shimmered, not with softness, but with exhaustion. "I don't know if I can trust you." "You shouldn't," he said. "Not yet." She nodded slowly. Then, unexpectedly, she reached into a drawer and pulled out a photo, old, faded. The 2 of them years ago, her pregnant, glowing, him smiling, younger, eyes full of something that hadn't yet been broken. "I kept it," she said, "not because I missed you, but because I needed to remember who we used to be." He took the photo gently, his hands trembling. "I want to earn the right to stand next to you again," he said. even if it takes the rest of my life. Unji turned away before the moment swallowed her whole. She reached for the bowls on the counter and began to ladle out the steaming soup, her back to him again. The smell of garlic, sesame, and seaweed filled the air. I should take them to school, she said calmly, as if nothing had just cracked open between them. Daniel nodded slowly. I'll come with you. She paused for a beat. Not long, but enough to say she was surprised. Are you sure that's a good idea? I don't know, he answered, honest. But I want to be there, even if it's awkward. She didn't respond. When the children entered the kitchen a few minutes later, rubbing sleep from their eyes, the air lightened just a little. Era ran straight to Daniel, climbing onto his lap like it had always been hers. Min leaned against the table, peering into the soup with a hungry grin. June, quieter as always, simply sat and waited. Unji served them with her usual soft precision, and Daniel helped without being asked. He passed napkins, filled glasses, and smiled when Min tried to sneak an extra spoonful of rice. Are we late? Min asked through a mouthful. Not yet, Unji replied. Can Appa come today? Era asked. Unji hesitated. Daniel looked at her. Then she said gently, if he wants to. All three children looked at him, hopeful. I'd like to, he said. If that's okay with everyone. They nodded, beaming. The walk to school was short, just past the hill and through a small grove of pine trees. Daniel carried Era's backpack. She told him about her class hamster and how it escaped last week and ended up in the art room. Min interrupted every few seconds with his own version of the story. June walked quietly beside Unji, glancing at Daniel now and then, but saying little. When they reached the school gates, Unji crouched down to fix Era's collar. Be good, she said. I always am, Era replied, kissing her mother's cheek, then Daniel's without hesitation. Min waved dramatically as he dashed inside. Bye Appa, bye Amma. June stayed behind for a moment, staring up at his father. You're really coming back later? He asked. Daniel bent down so they were eye level. Yes, I promise. June nodded, satisfied for now, and ran off to join his siblings. Unji stood silently beside him. They trust you fast, she said. Too fast. Daniel sighed. I know. You have no idea how many mornings they've cried because of empty promises. She continued, her voice low. So if you're going to do this, Daniel, really do this, then you need to understand what it means. I do, he said, eyes fixed on the school building. I'm not here for a weekend anymore. They walked back in silence. The path between the trees felt different now, not cold, but still cautious. Back at the house, Unji poured herself tea and sat by the window. Daniel followed, not asking for an invitation, just standing nearby. Then she said something unexpected. They like her. Daniel looked confused. Who? Selena. He blinked. They what? I saw the way Era looked at her, she said. Even if it was only for a few minutes. Children are drawn to softness. And she looked at them like they were more than just an inconvenience. Daniel sat slowly. She was kind to them. She was shocked, Unji said, but not cruel. Daniel nodded, unsure where she was going. You didn't lie to her, did you? His silence was answer enough. Unji looked down at her cup, tracing the rim with one finger. She deserved to know the truth, not just because of what we were, but because of what you told her we weren't. Daniel winced. I didn't know how to explain this, how to explain us. You still don't, she said, not harshly, just with that quiet truth that cut deeper than anger ever could. He stared at her, desperate to reach the version of her that once reached for him. I don't expect you to forget, he whispered, but I hope one day you'll remember what we were, even for a little while without pain. She looked up at him. Daniel stood on the porch, one hand resting on the wooden post, his eyes fixed on the path that disappeared into the forest. Unji moved inside, pacing between the laundry and the kettle, trying to distract herself. But her gaze kept flicking toward the window. The silence between them wasn't bitter. It had transformed into something else entirely. Fragile, uncertain, waiting to break or bloom. Suddenly, a sharp gust of wind swept across the yard. The trees groaned and bent, and then came the first fat drop of rain. Unji opened the door just as thunder rolled low and distant. "Close the windows in the back," she said quickly. "The wind'll blow everything off the shelf." Daniel nodded and hurried down the hallway, checking the kids' room first. As he latched the last pane shut, the power flickered. The lights dimmed, buzzed, then went out. "Amma!" Era's voice rang from the front door, followed by the sound of small footsteps. The children burst in from the garden, soaked and breathless, cheeks pink from the wind. "We were trying to catch the kite before the rain hit," Min cried, holding up the broken string like a trophy. "It flew into the trees." Unji grabbed towels from the hallway closet and wrapped them in turns, drying their hair and shoulders as lightning cracked in the distance. "Sit down, all of you. You'll catch a cold," she said firmly, but her voice was laced with concern, not scolding. June climbed onto the couch silently. His eyes drifted to Daniel, who stood in the doorway watching them all with a strange ache blooming in his chest. The chaos, the wet socks, the hurried drying of small heads. This was what he had missed. Not just birthdays and report cards. He had missed the ordinary storms. "I'll get candles," Daniel said. "No need," Unji replied. "Second drawer, right side." He opened it without hesitation. That drawer, the one that used to hold extra batteries, pens, and receipts. He pulled out 3 candles and lit them. Soft glows scattered shadows across the walls. They all sat in the living room as the storm closed in. The windows trembled with wind. The roof crackled with rain. Unji passed each child a warm cup of barley tea. Daniel took 1, 2, and sat on the floor. Cross-legged between Era and Min. June stayed beside Unji on the couch. The children spoke in excited, overlapping voices. About the trees bending, about the thunder sounding like a dragon, about how they'd seen lightning split the sky. Then, as quickly as it had started, the storm slowed. But no one moved, because there was something else in the air now. Stillness again, but deeper. Min looked at Daniel suddenly. "Appa, did you ever get scared like this?" Daniel glanced up. "You mean of storms?" "Yeah, and of other stuff, like being alone." Daniel didn't answer right away. The question landed hard. He nodded slowly. "Yes, I got scared a lot." Era leaned into his side. "What scared you the most?" He took a breath, and for the first time he said it without shame. "Losing people I loved." June turned to him. His eyes were steady. "Then why did you leave?" Silence. Daniel looked at him. "Because I was too proud to admit I was scared," he said. "And because I thought love could survive distance." "Can it?" June asked. Daniel shook his head. "Not when it's left alone." June didn't speak again. Then Unji's voice broke the quiet. Low, quiet, honest. "After you left, the first storm that hit, they all crawled into bed with me. All 3 of them." Era cried. Min asked when the roof would fall in. And June, he stayed up the whole night, watching the door. Daniel's hand curled tightly around the teacup. "I wasn't there," he whispered. "No," she said. "You weren't. But I want to be now." "Wanting isn't the same as doing," she said. "I know." The wind softened against the windows. And then, Min, always the bridge between silence and chaos, looked up and smiled. "I think the house is braver now, 'cause it didn't fall down." Era giggled. "Yeah, it didn't even squeak this time." Daniel looked around. The flickering candles, the soaked socks on the floor, the quiet breathing of his children. The storm outside had passed. But inside, maybe, just maybe, something was beginning to clear. He looked at Unji. Her eyes were tired, but for the first time in years, they weren't distant. Daniel sat on the edge of the couch, watching them, silent, reverent. June was tucked against Era's side, one hand curled under his chin, still and quiet like always. Min clutched a toy car in his fist, even in sleep. Unji returned from the kitchen with a folded blanket. She knelt beside Min, gently draping it over him, brushing his damp hair off his forehead. Then she reached for June, tucking the edge beneath his shoulder. Her hands moved with a mother's instinct, practiced, protective. Daniel didn't speak. Not yet. He didn't want to shatter the stillness. She rose and turned to him. Their eyes met in the flickering candlelight. "Will you help me move them to their room?" she asked softly. He nodded, stood, and together they lifted each child gently, one by one. No words, just shared weight, shared warmth. When it was done, and the room was empty again, Eunji closed the door to the children's room behind her. Back in the living room, the candlelight now felt different. Intimate, fragile. Daniel stood near the window, arms crossed, staring at the glistening pine trees outside. "She told me once," he began, his voice low, "that I carried the weight of the world but dropped everything that mattered." Eunji sat down, her back straight. "Selena?" He nodded. "She didn't say it to hurt me. She just said it like it was obvious." Eunji looked at the flickering flame on the table. Was she right? Daniel didn't answer right away. He walked toward the table and sat across from her. "I think I spent so many years trying to prove myself that I forgot why I started." She was quiet, watching him. "I thought being successful would fix the shame. The way your family never looked at me like I belonged. The way my father made me feel small. I thought if I climbed high enough, no one could hurt me again." "And did it work?" she asked. He shook his head. "No, it just made me lonelier." A moment passed, then another, and then her voice quieter now. Not soft, not yet, but less guarded. "I used to wait for you," she said, "even after the divorce. For months, every time the phone rang, I thought it would be you." Daniel looked down. "I knew it was stupid," she added, "but I still waited." "I'm sorry," he whispered. "You already said that." "I'll say it again," he said. "And again, as long as it takes." She blinked back something, maybe tears, maybe nothing at all. Then she stood slowly and walked over to the shelf near the wall. She opened a small wooden box and pulled something from it. A folded piece of paper, yellowed by time. She brought it to the table, sat across from him again, and placed it in front of him. He recognized it instantly. His handwriting. "I found this after you left," she said. Daniel unfolded it carefully. It was a letter, half-finished. Words he had scribbled on the back of a flight itinerary. Words he never sent. He read it silently. "I'm not leaving because I stopped loving you. I'm leaving because I'm afraid if I stay, I'll fail you. And I can't bear to watch myself fall in your eyes." Daniel looked up. "You never meant for me to see this, did you?" She shook her head. "But I did. And for a long time I hated it. Because you chose your fear over our family. Over me." He folded the paper, hands trembling. "I don't want to be that man anymore." She leaned back in her chair. "I want to believe you," she said. "But belief comes slow when you've been abandoned." Daniel looked at her, steady now. "Then let me earn it, day by day. Let me do the work." Her lips parted slightly, as if to speak, but she stopped herself. Instead, she reached for the candle and snuffed out the flame with 2 fingers. Darkness swallowed the room. "You can stay the night," she said, her voice quiet. "But that doesn't mean this is easy, or certain, or even possible." He nodded once, the shadows stretching between them. "I know." But in the silence that followed, neither of them left the table. Inside, the house was still. Daniel stood in the kitchen, barefoot, a cup of tea warming his hands. He hadn't slept again, but his body felt different, like it belonged to something now. A rhythm not of boardrooms and flights, but of wooden floors, creaking doors, and soft breathing down the hall. He stared out the window until he heard quiet footsteps. Eunji appeared in the doorway, her hair loosely tied back, eyes still thick with sleep. She wore a sweater he recognized. A dark one, frayed at the cuffs, soft with age. She used to wear it on rainy Sundays when they'd stay in and read books by the window, back when love had been simple and silent. Daniel turned. "Morning." She gave a small nod and crossed the kitchen, opening a cabinet without a word. He poured another cup and set it on the counter beside her. She glanced at it, then at him, but didn't say thank you. She just took it, sipped, and leaned against the counter in silence. They stood there side by side, not touching, not speaking, just existing. Then, after a long pause, she spoke. "They asked about you this morning." Daniel's heart stopped for a beat. "What did you tell them?" "That you were still here," she said. "That you stayed through the storm." He swallowed hard. "Did they look surprised?" "No," she said. "That's what scared me." He looked at her now, really looked, at the curve of her mouth as she held herself steady, at the flicker of fear in her eyes. "They're already expecting you to stay, like nothing happened, like they didn't cry over you. For years." Daniel's voice dropped. "And you?" She met his gaze. "I'm still trying not to expect anything." He nodded slowly. "That's fair." There was a silence, long and stretched thin. Then he said, "I want to talk to them. Really talk. Not just play catch or make breakfast. I want to answer their questions. Even the hard ones." Unji looked at him. "You sure you're ready for that?" "No," he admitted. "But they are." She stared into her cup. "What if they ask why you never wrote? Or why you never came back sooner? What if they ask why I cried some nights and told them not to hate you?" "Then I'll tell them the truth," he said. "That I was a coward. That I made choices I thought were right and I was wrong. And that no amount of guilt fixes the years I missed. But that I'll spend the rest of my life trying to give them better ones." Unji's eyes shimmered. She blinked, looked away, then nodded once. "I'll be outside," she said. "When you're ready." Daniel found them in the children's room, sitting on the floor with picture books and markers scattered across a rug. June was drawing something in the corner, a large tree with 5 stick figures beneath it. Min was coloring in a dragon with his tongue peeking from the side of his mouth. Era, of course, was singing to herself and trying to braid a ribbon into her doll's hair. They looked up when he entered. Era beamed. "Appa!" Daniel knelt down. "Can we talk for a minute?" They exchanged glances, curiosity, not fear. That gave him hope. They gathered around him, sitting cross-legged, waiting. June watched him the way Unji used to, like he could hear what wasn't being said. "I wanted to tell you something," Daniel said slowly. "Something I should have said a long time ago." They were quiet. "I left because I thought I had to, because I was scared, because I didn't think I could be a good father and still be strong in the world I lived in." "But you were our father," Era said softly. "I know," he whispered, "and I never stopped being that. But I wasn't there for you. I missed birthdays. I missed good days and bad days. I missed your first steps, your first words. I can never get that time back." Min looked down at his hands. Daniel continued, "But I don't want to miss another day. I want to be here now if you'll let me." There was a long pause. Then Min looked up. "Are you gonna leave again when you get scared?" Daniel's throat tightened. "No," he said. "Not anymore." June spoke next. His voice was quiet, careful. "Do you still love Amma?" Daniel blinked, caught off guard, not by the question but by how much the answer mattered. "Yes," he said. "Not in the same way, but in a way that will never go away. Because she gave me the 3 most beautiful people I've ever met." Era crawled into his lap then, without hesitation. Min followed, hugging his side. June stayed back, but only for a second. Then he scooted closer, leaning just enough to rest his shoulder against his father's. Daniel stood at the edge of the garden with a rake in his hand, gathering fallen leaves beneath the pines. It wasn't about the mess. It was about doing something with his hands. Something quiet, something real. From the corner of his eye, he saw Unji step outside. She held 2 mugs, steam rising from both. She walked toward him slowly, the way you approach a moment you're not sure you're ready to share. He set the rake aside as she handed him a cup. He took it with a gentle nod. They stood there for a while, not facing each other, just staring out at the yard, at the sun-dappled grass and the swing that Era loved. "They told me what you said," she murmured, eyes on the trees. Daniel glanced at her. "Did they seem okay?" She nodded. June didn't say much, but he's softer today. Min's been drawing dragons with 3 hearts. Era hasn't stopped singing. A faint smile touched Daniel's lips. She's the bravest of them all. She never doubted you'd come back, Unji said, turning her gaze toward him now. Even when I told her not to hope too much, she'd say, Appa is just taking a long way home. Daniel blinked hard, his fingers tightening around the mug. I wish I could go back, he whispered. I would have done everything differently. But you can't, she said. Neither of us can. He nodded slowly. I know. She hesitated, then asked, Do you still work with your father? No, Daniel said quietly. I told him I was done. I walked away. She turned to him fully now, surprised. You left the company? I left everything that made me someone I didn't recognize, he said. The board, the title, the endless days that meant nothing. I thought those things gave me power, but they only took things away from me. I don't want that anymore. Unji studied him for a long moment. And what do you want instead? He met her gaze, steady. I want to be a father. I want to build a life that doesn't feel like I'm running from something. I want to be around for bedtime stories and scraped knees. I want to plant something and watch it grow. She looked down at her hands. That's a lot of wanting, she said softly. And wanting isn't enough. I know, he replied. That's why I'm here. Still, doing. She didn't answer right away. Then, do you remember the night I told you I was pregnant? He blinked, then smiled faintly. You were shaking so hard I thought something was wrong. And you dropped the cup of water, she said, almost laughing. It shattered all over the kitchen floor. You said, I'm sorry, before you even said the words. She nodded, eyes distant. Because I knew what it would do to us. Daniel turned to her. It didn't ruin us, Unji. I ruined us. She didn't argue. Instead, she said, the children don't just need you now. They'll need you in 5 years and 10 when they start asking questions about who they are and why we broke. I'll be there, he said. Even if they hate me for a while. Even if they need space. I'll be there. The silence.